I didn't expect applause. I expected a number. In sales, your life gets reduced to a dashboard. Pipeline, close rate, renewal risk, forecast variance. If the numbers are good, people smile at you in hallways. If the numbers are bad, they stop making eye contact, like you're contagious. Last quarter, our numbers were bad. We sell workflow software to mid-market manufacturing companies. Nothing glamorous, nothing viral, but the kind of boring product that prints money when the economy is stable. The problem was the economy wasn't stable. A competitor started undercutting us. Procurement teams stretched approvals into months. 2 customers froze expansion because their CFO needed visibility. Leadership's answer was the usual: a town hall, a pep talk, a slide with the word alignment in big font. Then quietly they tightened discount rules and told managers to protect margin, which meant the same thing it always means. Hit your number, but don't ask for anything back. My manager, Kyle, pulled me aside after the town hall. He was the kind of guy who could say, "I'm here for you," while checking his phone. "Big quarter coming," he said. "We need heroes." I didn't love the word heroes. Heroes are expected to bleed for free. "I'll do my job," I told him, "but I'm not doing miracles without a conversation about comp. I'm under banned." Kyle gave me the sympathetic face, the one manager's practice in the mirror. "Totally hear you. After we close the quarter," he said. I'd heard that line before. So I went back to my desk and did what I always do when I don't trust promises. I built a plan that didn't require them. The gap wasn't effort. The gap was structure. We treated renewals like paperwork and new deals like lottery tickets. Reps chased shiny prospects while churn quietly ate the base. Nobody owned the boring work because boring work doesn't get you praised in meetings. I started calling my renewal accounts first, not to check in, not to beg, to quantify value in plain English and lock decisions early. I pulled usage reports and mapped them to outcomes. Hours saved, rework reduced, backlog cleared. I asked questions procurement hates because they expose delays. Who signs? What date does budget reset? What would make this easy? Then I made it easy. I built a simple renewal sequence. Value review call, executive sponsor note. Revised order form with clean terms. Signature by a real date. No drama. No discounts until the last step. No vague promises. It worked. A customer in Ohio who'd been shopping options renewed at a higher tier because I showed them what switching would cost in downtime. A plant in Texas expanded seats after I found 2 departments using our tool without licenses. A long-stalled deal finally moved because I put the legal red lines into a 1-page summary their counsel could actually read. Week by week, the dashboard changed. Pipelines stopped looking like wishful thinking. Forecasts went from at risk to probable. Kyle stopped saying, "We need heroes," and started saying, "Great momentum," like momentum grows on trees. By the time finance closed the books, I wasn't just over quota. I was at 128% of target. And when the profitability report came out, because our pricing is structured in a way that makes margin measurable, my accounts had contributed $2.3 million in additional profit compared to forecast. Profit, not revenue, not influence, profit. On Monday morning, Kyle called me into a glass conference room with the kind of grin that usually means he's about to borrow your success. "Man," he said, leaning back, "you carried the quarter." I didn't smile. I waited. "We're going to highlight you in the leadership recap," he continued. "Show people what good looks like." "Great," I said. "So we're adjusting my base, right? Or adding a performance bonus? Something tied to the profit delta?" Kyle's grin tightened. "Comp is complicated right now." There it was, the paper wall. "Comp is always complicated when it's for employees," I said. "It's never complicated when it's for leadership." He laughed like I'd made a harmless joke. "Come on, don't be cynical." "I'm not cynical," I replied. "I'm precise." Kyle slid a printed email across the table. Subject line, Recognition initiative. It's not instead of anything, he said quickly. It's culture. New program for top performers. I scanned the email, points, badges, a company store, and a line near the bottom that made my eyebrows lift. Top performers will receive premium apparel items, subject to availability. You're kidding, I said. Kyle shrugged. People like swag. It builds morale. I stared at the paper. 2.3 million in profit. Swag. He leaned forward, voice lower. Listen, if you keep your attitude right, you'll get visibility. Visibility turns into opportunities. I'd learned the hard way that visibility is what they offer when they don't want to offer cash. I left the meeting calm because anger wastes energy you might need later. 2 days later, a box showed up at my desk. Not from payroll, not from HR with a confidential envelope, from the company store. Inside was a navy hoodie with our logo on the chest and a small card taped to the plastic sleeve. Congratulations, redeem your reward if sizes remain. I read it twice, waiting for the punchline. Then I flipped the packing slip. Item 1 hoodie. Value $19. I looked around the open office. People were typing, laughing, living their normal workday. Nobody noticed my face go still. My coworker Eli leaned over the divider. That a bonus box? I held up the hoodie. He blinked. That's the reward? I forced a short laugh. Apparently. Eli shook his head slowly, like he didn't want to believe it. That's insulting. I nodded once. It's instructive. Because a hoodie isn't a mistake. A hoodie is a decision. Someone sat in a meeting and decided that 2.3 million in profit deserved $19 of fabric. And they were comfortable enough with that decision to add a little joke about sizes. I slid the hoodie back into the box and closed the lid carefully, like it was evidence. Then I opened my laptop and pulled up 3 things: my commission plan, my job description, and the internal policy on discretionary awards. I wasn't going to throw a tantrum. I wasn't going to beg. I was going to understand the system that thought this was normal. And once I understood it, I was going to decide what it would cost them to keep treating me like a mascot. Because if they wanted to pay me in cotton, I could make sure they paid someone else in consequences. The next morning, I didn't storm into Kyle's office. I didn't post a sarcastic photo of the hoodie in Slack. I didn't do any of the things people do when they want to feel powerful for 5 minutes and then get quietly labeled difficult. I did the opposite. I acted normal. I showed up early, answered emails, ran my pipeline calls, and let my calendar look boring. Because the moment you become emotional in a company like ours, you stop being a person with a point and become a problem to manage. And I wasn't going to be managed. Around 10, Kyle sent a message. Wins meeting at noon, quick shoutouts, be there. We didn't normally do wins meetings. We did forecast meetings where everyone pretended their deals were healthier than they were. A wins meeting meant Kyle needed a story. I knew whose story it would be. Noon came. The team filed into the big conference room. Kyle stood at the front with a clicker and a slide deck that looked suspiciously polished for something he called quick. HR's business partner Marissa was there, plus someone from marketing with a laptop open like they were about to write a press release about our feelings. Kyle smiled at the room. I just want to say how proud I am. Last quarter was tough, but we pulled together. There it was, together. The most efficient word in corporate theft. He clicked to a slide titled Quarterly Highlights. My name was on it, but it was in small font, like a footnote. Then he clicked again. A slide titled Renewal Motion Improvements. And there it was, my process. Not vaguely, not inspired by. My structure, my language, my exact sequence. Value review call, executive sponsor alignment. Revised order form, signature date. Even the phrase I'd used in my internal doc. Value before renewal. Kyle talked through it like he'd built it in a brainstorm session. We realized, he said, pacing slowly, that our renewals needed a stronger story, so we designed a simple renewal motion. And it worked. We designed, I watched the marketing person type. I watched Marissa's pen move. I watched the room nod. Because people will nod at anything said confidently in front of a slide. Kyle clicked to the last slide. A big number. 2.3 million. He didn't say my name that time. He said, our team's impact. Then he turned to me with a grin that made my stomach go cold. And of course, he said, special recognition to one of our top performers. You know who you are. A few people clapped. It sounded polite, not celebratory. Like a reflex, I sat there with my hands folded, feeling my face stay calm while my brain did math. If he was using my work as a leadership story, that meant he was spending it. Credit is currency here. He was buying himself status with my results. After the meeting, people trickled out. A couple coworkers gave me small nods, like they understood without wanting to be involved. Eli caught up to me in the hallway. That was your playbook, he muttered. I know, I said. You're going to say something, right? I looked at him. Not in the hallway. Because the hallway is where you lose. The hallway is where they make you look emotional. The hallway is where they tell you to take it down a notch. I waited until the conference room was empty except Kyle, who was packing up his laptop like a man who believed the day belonged to him. I walked back in and closed the door behind me. Not hard, not dramatic, just closed. Kyle didn't look up. Great meeting, right? That deck, I said. The renewal motion slide. That's my work. Kyle finally looked at me, still smiling, but his eyes sharpened the way a knife looks clean. It's a team initiative, he said. It was my initiative, I replied. I wrote it. I implemented it. I can show version history. Kyle leaned back in his chair and let out a slow breath, like I was annoying him by insisting on facts. Why are you making this weird? He asked. That sentence is designed to do one thing. Move the problem from their behavior to your reaction. I kept my voice level. Because you presented it like you built it, and because I'm being paid below band, and because you're rewarding me with a $19 hoodie. Kyle's smile twitched. Don't be childish. I stared at him. Childish is thinking a hoodie is recognition. Kyle's eyes narrowed and his tone dropped a notch. Look, he said, leadership's watching. This kind of attitude can hurt you. There it was, the threat, wrapped in concern. I'm not asking for favors, I said. I'm asking for fair compensation and accurate credit. Kyle folded his hands and spoke like he was mentoring me. You want the truth? He said. Comp is tight. Budgets are tight. You're lucky you're getting visibility. Visibility? Again. He leaned forward. If you play ball, you'll be taken care of. I'd heard that phrase in different voices my whole career. It always means stop asking questions. I nodded once like I accepted it. Then I said, okay. Kyle relaxed instantly. He misread the nod as surrender. Good, he said. I knew you'd get it. I walked out and went back to my desk. Heart steady, face neutral. Then I opened my laptop and did something I should have done years ago. I started building a file. Not a revenge file. A reality file. I pulled up the document where I'd built the renewal playbook and took screenshots of the version history, showing authorship and timestamps. I exported the performance dashboard showing my territory's profit impact. I saved the email threads where I'd introduced the renewal sequence to the team. I downloaded the internal wiki page where Kyle had recently posted an updated renewal motion, with my words pasted into it like he'd invented them. Everything was already there. I didn't create anything new. I just made it impossible to pretend it didn't exist. Then I pulled up HR's portal and searched for compensation policy. Pay bands, market adjustments, performance-based increases, discretionary awards. Buried in a bland policy document was a detail most employees never read. Managers could request discretionary compensation adjustments and spot awards if they could justify retention risk or exceptional contribution. Managers could request, which meant Kyle's budgets are tight line wasn't the whole story. It was the story he wanted me to accept. I requested my compensation history through the portal. Not a complaint, a request. HR responded 3 days later with a clean spreadsheet and a friendly sentence about transparency. They always sound friendly when they think it won't hurt them. I opened the spreadsheet and scanned the columns. Base salary, commission plan, role band, market alignment, adjustments. My base hadn't moved in 2 years. I wasn't shocked. I was irritated, but not shocked. Reliable people get parked? Then I noticed a column labeled Special Incentives. I hadn't seen that before. There were a few entries across the department, small payouts for project support or leadership initiative. Nothing tied to quota. And then I saw a line that made my throat tighten. Leadership discretion payout. Recipient, Kyle. Amount, not small. The date was 2 weeks after my renewal playbook had been rolled out. I didn't move for a full minute. My fingers rested on the trackpad, and my eyes stayed on that row like it might change if I stared hard enough. It wasn't just that he stole credit. He got paid for it. And suddenly the hoodie made perfect sense. The hoodie wasn't the insult. The hoodie was the cover story, a cheap culture reward for the person who actually did the work, while the real reward went to the person who claimed it. That night, I stopped being the hero. I forwarded the HR spreadsheet to my personal email because company systems have a way of losing documents when they become inconvenient. Then I created a simple timeline in my notes. What I built, when I built it, who saw it, when it worked, who presented it, who got paid. No emotions, no adjectives, just dates and facts. Because if I walked into a conversation with leadership and said, "This is unfair," they'd smile and tell me to be patient. But if I walked in with a timeline, someone would have to choose between the truth and a lie. And lies get expensive when they're written down. The following week, Kyle messaged me again. Leadership loved the renewal story. They want you to present it at the all hands next month. I read the message twice. Then I typed back, absolutely. Happy to. He replied instantly with a thumbs up emoji, like he'd just won. And I stared at the screen, feeling something calm settle into place. Because if they wanted me on stage, in front of everyone, telling the story of our renewal motion, I was going to tell it. I just wasn't going to tell it the way Kyle thought. I didn't know it yet, but agreeing to that presentation would change my life at that company. Not because I was going to go viral internally or become some inspirational story. This wasn't that kind of place. This was a place where attention was currency and silence was compliance. The all hands wasn't a stage for truth. It was a stage for control, which is exactly why it mattered. The day after Kyle's message, I got an invite labeled All Hands Prep, Renewal Motion. Kyle, Marissa from HR, and someone from marketing named Tessa were on it. It was scheduled for 30 minutes, which told me everything. They wanted a clean soundbite, not an honest story. I spent the next week preparing 2 versions of my presentation. Version 1 was what they expected. Clean slides, clear steps, a team-friendly tone, no sharp edges. Version 2 wasn't a presentation, it was a file. My reality file, updated and organized like a case. I didn't do anything illegal. I didn't record anyone. I didn't access anything I wasn't allowed to access. I simply collected what I already owned, or could legitimately retrieve. Version history, emails, Slack posts, dashboards, HR policy language, and the compensation spreadsheet HR had already provided. Then I stopped thinking like a top performer and started thinking like a risk. Because when a company starts using you as a story while refusing to pay you, you're not an asset anymore. You're a liability they want to keep quiet. On Thursday morning, I walked into the prep meeting with my laptop and a calm face. Kyle sat at the end of the table like a director. Tessa had her laptop open and a notepad titled Key Quotes. Marissa sat slightly apart, pen ready, expression neutral in the way HR people learn to survive. Kyle clapped his hands. All right, let's make this punchy. Leadership wants energy. I nodded. Understood. I started with the clean version. I walked them through the renewal sequence. I used simple language. I avoided saying I too often, because I could already feel Kyle reacting whenever my ownership showed up in a sentence. 10 minutes in, Kyle stopped me on a slide. Can we tweak the framing? He asked, smiling. Make it more about how we collaborated. Tessa nodded automatically. Yes, we want it to feel inclusive. Marissa didn't nod. She just watched me. I kept my voice steady. I can adjust language, I said, but I'm not going to imply this was a committee effort when it wasn't. Kyle's smile tightened. No one's saying committee, just team. I looked at him. Team didn't write it. Team didn't run it. Team didn't take the calls. Kyle's eyes flashed. He didn't like being spoken to plainly, especially in front of HR. Marissa finally spoke. Kyle, who authored the process document? Kyle laughed like it was an annoying detail. Does that matter? Results matter. Marissa's pen moved. Authorship matters when credit becomes compensation, she said. The room got quiet for half a second. Not dramatic, just real. Kyle recovered fast. Okay, he said, tone lighter. Let's not derail. We're here to prep the talk. I finished the clean version and closed my laptop like the meeting was over. Kyle stood up. Great. Tessa, pull a few quotes. Marissa, you good? Marissa didn't answer right away. She looked at me. Can you stay a minute? She asked. Kyle froze, then forced a grin. Sure, I'll let you two chat. He left. Tessa followed him, pretending she wasn't listening. The door clicked shut. Marissa exhaled, and her HR-neutral face softened into something closer to human. Off the record, she said. Are you okay? I didn't play tough. I didn't perform. I just told the truth, calmly. I'm not okay being underpaid and used as a success story while my manager collects discretionary payouts, I said. Marissa's eyes narrowed slightly. You saw discretionary payouts. I saw my compensation history, I said. HR provided it. It includes special incentives. Marissa went still. Send me what you have, she said. Not emotion, documentation. I nodded. I already have it organized. Her voice stayed quiet. Do you understand what you're implying? I understand exactly what I'm implying, I said. And I'm not implying. I'm stating. Marissa nodded once, like she'd decided something. Email me tonight, she said, from your company account. Keep it factual. That night, I wrote the cleanest email of my life. No accusations, no adjectives, no unfair. Just a timeline. What I created, when I created it, how it was rolled out, how Kyle presented it, and the dates of the discretionary payout entry. I attached the screenshots of document version history and the original email threads where I introduced the playbook. Then I hit send. The next morning, Kyle messaged me, Why is HR asking me questions about your comp? I stared at the message. He wasn't asking because he was confused. He was asking because he was cornered. I typed back, because I requested a review. Kyle replied, Stop making this a thing. I didn't respond. 2 hours later, I got a meeting invite from Nadia, the director of sales. Subject line, territory performance and retention. Nadia wasn't Kyle's boss, exactly. She was above him, and she had one trait Kyle didn't. She didn't need to be liked. When I walked into her office, she didn't offer small talk. I've reviewed your numbers, she said. They're exceptional. I nodded. Thank you. She turned her monitor slightly toward me. On the screen was my performance dashboard, the profit delta, and a summary of renewal improvements. Then she said, I've also seen a concern come through HR. I kept my face calm. Yes. Nadia leaned forward. Talk to me like I'm a board member, she said. Facts, sequence, no drama. So I did. I walked her through the same timeline I'd sent Marissa. I showed her the version history. I explained the renewal changes in practical terms. I explained why profit increased, reduced churn risk, cleaner discounts, earlier signatures. Nadia listened without interrupting. When I finished, she asked one question. Did Kyle claim ownership of this initiative to leadership? She said. I don't know what he said behind closed doors, I replied, but he presented it as, we designed it in the WINS meeting, and he's pushing me to frame it as teamwork at the all hands. Nadia's jaw tightened slightly. Then she said something that made my stomach drop for a different reason, because it confirmed the shape of the whole scam. Kyle submitted a justification for a discretionary payout, she said. He described a renewal motion initiative that improved profitability. It was approved. I held her gaze. That initiative was mine, I said. Nadia nodded. I know. I blinked. You know? She tapped the screen. Because the timing doesn't match his work, and because the language in his justification matches language from your original doc. Word for word. The air in the room felt heavier, not with anger, with consequence. Nadia leaned back. Here's what's going to happen, she said. Audit is being looped in. HR is documenting, and the all hands is still happening. My pulse tightened. You still want me to present? Yes, Nadia said, but you're not going to do anything reckless. You're going to do it clean. I nodded slowly. What does clean mean? It means you present the process, she said, and you present ownership without attacking. You let the facts exist in daylight. I sat there for a second, realizing what she was offering me. Not revenge, not comfort, a controlled opportunity to make the truth undeniable. They'll try to frame you as bitter, Nadia added. I looked at her. I'm not bitter, I said. I'm precise. Nadia's mouth twitched, almost a smile. Good. Precision is defensible. Then she said, one more thing. She opened her drawer and slid a printed document across the desk. It was the compensation band for my role, the midpoint, the range, the policy language on market adjustments. I was below where I should have been, by a measurable amount. Nadia looked at me. If you're going to do this, she said, you do it for a reason, not because you're insulted. I glanced at the paper, then back at her. I'm doing it because this is how they keep good people quiet, I said, and I'm done being quiet. Nadia nodded once. Then don't be, she said, but be smart. As I walked out of her office, my phone buzzed again. Kyle, we need to talk, now. I kept walking, because I could feel it in the building. The shift that happens right before a storm, the polite emails, the sudden meetings, the way people avoid looking at you because they sense power moving in the wrong direction. And for the first time since that hoodie hit my desk, I felt something that wasn't anger. They thought I was trapped in the usual script. Work hard, accept crumbs, stay grateful. But the script had changed, and the part they didn't understand yet was simple. I wasn't asking anymore. I was documenting. And then silence, the kind that means something's gone wrong. The morning of the all hands, the office felt staged. People were dressed like they were going to be photographed. Leaders floated around with coffee and fake calm. Marketing hovered near the back, with cameras pointed at anything that looked culture. Kyle approached me near the side of the stage area, with that polished grin again. Big moment, he said, lowering his voice like we were partners. Just keep it positive. No personal stuff. I looked at him. I'm here to present the process, I said. Good, he replied quickly, because leadership loved the story. The story, not the work, not the person, the story. I walked to the front when my name was called. My hands didn't shake. I wasn't nervous. I was focused. There's a difference. The CEO did his usual opener. Gratitude, resilience, a sentence about investing in people that never came with numbers. Then he introduced Kyle as a leader who drove renewal transformation. Kyle stood, waved, and sat back down like he owned the quarter. Then the CEO said my name. I stepped up, plugged in my laptop, and faced the room. First slide, renewals that protect margin. I started exactly the way they expected. Calm, helpful, practical. I explained the sequence, early value review, usage to outcome mapping, executive sponsor alignment, Clean paperwork, clear signature dates. I use neutral language. I didn't throw adjectives like knives. I gave the team something they could actually use. Heads nodded. People took notes. Even the CFO leaned forward when I mentioned discount discipline and churn prevention. Kyle relaxed in his chair. I could see it. He thought he'd contained me. Then I reached the slide titled, How It Started. I paused, looked at the room, and said, I'm going to be transparent, because transparency is how we keep good people. The room quieted slightly. Not alarmed, curious. This renewal motion began as a response to our profit gap last quarter, I continued. It was built and implemented in my territory first, then shared to the team once results were proven. Kyle shifted. I clicked. A timeline appeared. Simple dates, no emotions, just sequence. I said, This is the timeline of implementation. If anyone ever needs the source materials, version history exists for everything I'm showing. I didn't say Kyle's name. I didn't accuse. I simply made ownership a fact. Then I clicked again. Slide title. Recognition versus reward. Under it, 2 bullet points. Result. 2.3 million in additional profit versus forecast. Reward. Company Hoodie valued at $19. Subject to size availability. A ripple moved through the room. Not laughter, not applause. The kind of uncomfortable sound people make when they realize something they thought was normal is actually embarrassing. I let the silence sit for one beat, not long enough to be theatrical, just long enough to land. Then I said, evenly, I'm not sharing that to humiliate anyone. I'm sharing it because this is what high performers measure when deciding whether to stay. The CEO's smile tightened. The CFO's face went still. People in the front row stopped pretending to sip coffee. In the second row, Nadia stood up. Thank you, she said, voice calm but firm. Leadership will be addressing compensation and recognition structures immediately after this meeting. It wasn't a promise. It was a directive. Kyle looked like his blood pressure spiked. He stood halfway, then sat back down, like his body didn't know what to do. I finished the rest of my talk professionally. I gave the team the playbook. I answered 2 questions. I walked off the stage without looking at Kyle. As soon as the all-hands ended, my phone buzzed. Kyle, get to my office, now. I didn't reply. Nadia appeared near the aisle and nodded toward a small conference room down the hall. Come with me, she said. Marissa from HR was already inside, and there was a third person I hadn't seen before, a woman in a dark blazer with a badge that didn't match the usual employee design. She stood and offered her hand. I'm Priya, she said. Internal audit. That's when my stomach tightened, not with fear, but with understanding. This wasn't just about a hoodie. This wasn't even just about credit. This was about money moving under false justification. Priya sat down and opened a folder. We received information suggesting a discretionary payout. May have been approved based on misrepresented authorship, she said. Marissa glanced at me, then back at Priya. We need to document this cleanly, she said. Nadia looked at me. Do you have everything? She asked. I nodded once and pulled a thin packet from my bag. I'd printed it the night before, because digital files can disappear, but paper is stubborn. Inside were 3 things: version history screenshots, email threads, and the HR compensation spreadsheet with the discretionary payout line highlighted. Priya flipped through it, expression controlled. That's what auditors do. They don't get emotional. They get exact. This is solid, she said quietly. Marissa asked, Did you access anything you weren't authorized to access? No, I said. Everything came from my own docs, emails, dashboards, and the compensation history HR provided to me. Priya nodded. Good, she said, because that makes this straightforward. Nadia leaned back and said, Kyle's going to claim this is retaliation. I kept my voice even. He can claim whatever he wants, I said. The timeline doesn't care. Priya looked at me. One more question, she said. Did Kyle pressure you to frame authorship as team? Yes, I said. repeatedly, including in the prep meeting. Marissa's pen moved again. Priya closed the folder. "We'll handle the rest," she said. The meeting ended. Nadia walked me back into the hall. "Do not engage with Kyle," she said. "I won't," I replied. As I returned to my desk, the office felt different. People weren't talking. Slack messages were short. The air had that brittle quality you get when a workplace realizes leadership might actually face consequences. An hour later, I saw Marissa and Priya walking toward Kyle's office. I didn't stand up. I didn't lean over to watch. I kept working because nothing makes guilty people more nervous than calm. The door to Kyle's office closed. 10 minutes later, it opened. Kyle walked out carrying his laptop bag. His face was pale and his mouth was tight, like he was trying not to make a scene. Marissa walked beside him. Priya followed behind. No security, no shouting, just HR and audit doing the quiet, procedural version of violence. Kyle's eyes scanned the floor until they landed on me. For a second, I thought he might come over. I thought he might try to perform some last-minute dominance. He didn't. He just stared, like he couldn't understand how a person he considered manageable had become unmanageable. Then he kept walking. That moment didn't feel like victory. It felt like the first breath after being underwater too long. They thought I was gone. I wasn't. But I also knew something important. Removing Kyle wasn't the end. Companies like ours don't admit wrongdoing unless they're forced. They don't apologize. They restructure, rebrand, and hope you forget. So I didn't relax. Because the real question wasn't whether Kyle would face consequences. The real question was whether I would finally be treated like the value I created, or whether they'd offer me something shiny and hope I'd stop being inconvenient. And as I sat back down, a new meeting invite popped into my inbox from the CEO's assistant. Subject, leadership discussion. Time, tomorrow morning. No agenda. Just a room full of people who suddenly needed me to be quiet again, and I already knew my answer. They expected that meeting to put me back in my place. It did the opposite. The next morning, I walked into the executive conference room with the same calm I'd used on stage. Not because I was fearless, because fear is useless when the facts are already printed. The CEO sat at the head of the table. The CFO was beside him, laptop open, face unreadable. Nadia was there, Marissa from HR, Priya from audit, and legal, one attorney I'd seen once at a contract training, the kind of person who doesn't speak until every word is necessary. The CEO gestured to the chair across from him. "Thank you for coming," he said, voice controlled. I sat down. "Of course." He tried to start with softness. "We appreciate your contribution last quarter." I didn't nod. Appreciation is a cheap currency here. The CFO cut in, direct. "We've reviewed the documentation. The renewal process was authored by you and implemented in your territory first. That is not in dispute." Good. A clear sentence. No poetry. Priya added, "We also reviewed the discretionary payout request submitted under Kyle's name. The justification language matches your materials closely, and the timing aligns with your rollout. That creates a governance issue." The CEO's jaw tightened at the phrase governance issue because governance issues become board issues, and board issues become career issues. Marissa slid a folder toward me. "We're going to correct the record," she said, "and we're going to correct your compensation." I opened the folder. Inside was an offer letter and a compensation summary. It wasn't dramatic. It was written in the same sterile tone companies use to make everything feel optional, even when it isn't. Base salary adjustment to the proper market band, effective immediately. A retention bonus, structured over 12 months. Not a fantasy number, but meaningful enough to prove they understood the risk of losing me. A one-time performance award tied to profitability impact, documented as a discretionary spot award approved by finance, with a clear rationale attached, and a role change, ownership of the renewal motion as a formal responsibility, reporting directly to Nadia with cross-functional authority, to train and standardize the process. It was exactly what should have happened after a quarter like mine, if the company operated on logic instead of ego. I read every line twice, then looked up. "Who owns the process?" I asked. The CEO blinked like he expected gratitude first. Marissa answered carefully, "You are listed as the author and accountable owner. The company retains the right to use the process, but ownership for maintenance, training, and future revisions will be assigned to you." I nodded. "And my public credit?" Nadia spoke. "We're sending a correction internally. A written note to the org clarifying authorship and acknowledging you built the motion, not a vague team effort. Clear ownership." The CEO shifted in his seat. "We don't typically," Nadia's tone stayed respectful but firm. "We are this time." I looked back at the CEO. "And Kyle?" Priya answered without emotion. "Kyle's employment ended yesterday. His system access is revoked. His discretionary payout is under review, and the company will take appropriate action consistent with policy." Appropriate action. That usually means clawback, but auditors don't promise outcomes before the paperwork is complete. I didn't smile. I didn't need to. I could feel the room trying to measure me, trying to decide if I was satisfied enough to become quiet again. So I asked the question that mattered more than money. "Why did it take a public all-hands for this to be taken seriously?" I said. Silence. Then the CFO spoke, blunt as a hammer. "Because leadership believed the recognition program would retain people without increasing fixed cost." There it was. "The truth," said plainly. I glanced at the CEO. "So the hoodie wasn't an accident," I said. The CEO's eyes tightened. "It was meant as culture." I leaned back slightly. "Culture doesn't keep high performers," I said calmly. "Fair systems do." The legal attorney finally spoke. "We also want clarity," he said, "that you did not access any restricted information." "I didn't," I replied. "Everything I used was mine, or provided to me by HR. No recordings, no unauthorized access." Priya nodded, confirming. "That is consistent with our review." I flipped back to the compensation summary and pointed at one line. "This is effective immediately," I said. "Does that include retroactive adjustment?" Marissa answered. "We're issuing a one-time adjustment to account for the period you were under ban. It will be paid as a lump sum and documented as a market correction." That was the first time my chest loosened since the hoodie arrived. Not because I wanted them to suffer, because I wanted reality to be acknowledged in a way that couldn't be taken back later. I signed the offer, but I didn't rush. I made sure every page was complete. I asked for a copy countersigned by HR and Finance. I asked for the written authorship correction to be included as an action item with a date. They agreed because at that point, disagreement would have looked like retaliation. As I stood to leave, Nadia walked me to the door. "You did it the right way," she said quietly. "I didn't do it the nice way," I replied. She shook her head once. "Nice gets people ignored," she said. "You were clean." I went back to my desk and worked like normal, because clean is also how you survive the aftermath. When an org shakes, people look for someone to blame. I wasn't going to give them anything messy to hold. That afternoon, an internal email went out from Nadia. It stated clearly that the renewal motion was authored and implemented by me, that it was being standardized company-wide, and that I would be leading training. No vague language, no we, my name, my ownership. Slack didn't explode. It went quiet, then filled with small messages from reps I barely knew. Respect. About time. Teach me that renewal call structure. Kyle's departure was announced the next day with the usual corporate lie. Kyle has decided to pursue new opportunities. No mention of audit. No mention of stolen credit. Companies don't confess. They erase. But internally, policies changed. Discretionary payouts now required a documented artifact link and a second-level approval outside the direct manager chain. Audit added random sampling. HR updated the recognition program so apparel wasn't framed as a performance reward. They didn't admit it was insulting. They just quietly stopped doing it. Eli came by my desk late that week and leaned on the divider. "Did you keep the hoodie?" he asked. I opened my bottom drawer and showed him the sealed box. I hadn't redeemed my size, not because I wanted to be petty, because I wanted a reminder of how fast value gets translated into something cheap if you let other people do the math. Eli stared at it, then looked at me. "So what now?" he asked. I said the truth. Now the work has an owner, and the owner gets paid. A few weeks later, my paycheck hit my account with the adjusted base, and the market correction posted as a separate deposit. Not a gift card, not a slogan, not a note about size availability, just numbers reflecting reality. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel that background hum of being exploited. The office didn't become perfect. People didn't suddenly turn ethical. But the system around me shifted enough that it couldn't pretend I was invisible. And the most satisfying part wasn't Kyle being walked out. It was realizing I didn't need to yell, beg, or threaten to be taken seriously. I just had to stop accepting cotton as currency. Because once you make the truth expensive to ignore, it stops being a debate. It becomes policy.